So it's real. And we wanted to create a space where it's becomes safe to talk about these things, especially may it be in families, may it be in schools or in workplaces. If you don't get a aligned thinking about what we do with these things, then they start to live their own life. So we purposefully kept those emotion-loaded words in there with a commitment that our facilitators, our coaches, are gentle, they are cultural learners,
yes.
and they will work really hard to create a safe space to open up that conversation.
Welcome to the Unlocking Cultural Agility podcast, where we hear from some of the most advanced intercultural practitioners from around the world to help you become more culturally agile in today's complex environments. I'm your host, Shelley Reinhart, Global Network Liaison of KnowledgeWorks, where every day I work with our practitioners to help individuals and companies achieve relational success in that same complex world. This is the first of 2 episodes exploring the 3 colors of worldview. And in this episode, we're going to introduce and explore the 3 cultural worldview drivers. Our cultural drivers have a strong influence on how we think, how we speak, and how we act. And they can be found at the root of why we do what we do, as you'll see today. In the next episode, we're going to continue by looking at how we can apply these cultural worldview drivers to our world and in our lives. Let's get started. Welcome to the Unpacking Agility podcast. Again, we are here with another wonderful topic that I'm really excited to unpack today with none other than Marco, our international director and the founder of KnowledgeWorks. We have decided to kind of go back to the beginning, to the creation story, so to speak, of one of the essential elements of our products, the 3 colors of worldview. So kind of the essence of what is the 3 colors of worldview assessment? What are the 3 colors of worldview? So we're excited to kind of break that down for you today. And Marco is here with us to do that. So thank you so much, Marco.
I'm very much looking forward to it. There's so much to say about this. And
yes.
It's also very, very close to my heart as well. It's not just the product. It's so much more.
Yes. Well, and that's exactly what we're going to talk about today. So, of course, like I said, you're the international director and the founder. So I'd love to start off with the essence again. So the 3 colors of worldview. So is the creation of the 3 colors of worldview where KnowledgeWorks essentially began? Is that how KnowledgeWorks, is that sort of where it started?
It's one of those early ingredients, definitely. Yeah. So when we put a team together in early 2001, we had a diverse team of 5 people: Asia, Africa, Middle East, Europe, and America actually were on the team. And we were exploring how we could use our joint intercultural skills to have a positive impact in the workplace. And we started to do research on, what's out there, So in those days, Intercultural Press was still a separate entity. And the more we started to look at books that were written about anything intercultural, the more we realized very early on that a lot of those books were selling from one country into another, negotiating from one country into another, relocating. If you move to country X, then you're from country Y. Here is what your tips and tricks and do's and don'ts. And to be honest, our team was stationed in Dubai, and we had, jobs in the local market where everything was intercultural.
Yes.
And the more books we bought, the more discouraged we actually became, because the more we realized, wait a minute, this is all like, in essence, pretty well written tips and tricks, do's and don'ts books. And we realized very quickly that that was not exactly where we wanted to go. We realized from the complexity of cultural dynamics that we were working in, and that we believed the world was moving towards a lot more. The classical, the average Brazilian relocates to Germany and needs to know what the average German thinks, speaks, and how they act. And we felt that that's not what we want to contribute to. So we started to say, then what? We already were familiar with the world of psychometrics at that time. So in other words, psychometric tools measure typically personality or certain behavioral traits. And they're all based on debatable but universal frameworks. So you have the Jungian framework, you have the Big Five of psychology, you have Marston's framework, etc. Those universal frameworks supposedly are applicable to every human being on the planet. And that then lends itself to then say, oh, let's create a questionnaire. And then that questionnaire leads into a report. And that report produces a unique story about you, who you are as a psychological human being.
Yeah.
And we thought, why can't we look into doing something similar for culture? So instead of saying, I happen to be from the Netherlands, instead of saying, oh, let's see what the average Dutchman does, how these things speak and act. Instead of doing that, saying, well, can we find a way to help Marco understand who he is as a cultural human being? Oh. So that was sort of the challenge we gave ourselves. And then one day, one of my Canadian colleagues, he walked into the office with a paper. It was written by Roland Muller, who is an anthropologist in the region. And he sort of came up with this idea, well, would there potentially be cultural drivers that are undercurrents in cultures? And could it potentially be true that those undercurrents, those cultural drivers, might be present in the same way as, MBTI is based on a framework that's used all around the world, or DISC? Could it be those cultural drivers might be present all around the world? And we looked at it and we thought, this is special. This is something unique. We've never seen this before. Nothing like all the books that we had bought. And we said, this could be the beginning of creating an assessment that starts to answer that question. Who am I as a cultural human being? So we asked the author, said, hey, we got a hold of this. We would love to do more with it. Can we? This is your work. And he said, by all means, take it, and run with it. So he was very gracious. And that's how it got started. So we are now into its fourth edition, four iterations. The first two were on paper, and then we moved online. But even the third edition, which was online, was still there's still so much work to be done. Now a month ago, we released the fourth edition, and it's becoming richer and richer. So,
I love it.
Yeah, that's sort of the backstory.
That's its creation story. So, if you had to describe it in one sentence, describe it in one sentence for me. What does the assessment map? What does it determine?
So I would say it answers the question, what drives me as a cultural human being? What are the deepest drivers of my cultural wiring? So you could say the same as in Myers-Briggs, what Myers-Briggs became famous for is introversion, extroversion. In the world of DISC, it's, are you more relational or more task-oriented? So these types of things are embedded in the tool. And I would say the Three Colors of Worldview, it's really those deeper cultural drivers. But the way we designed it is to answer that at the personal level so that I get personal insight in how that works for me. And so I don't know if that is one sentence.
No, that's great. And you said earlier that our drivers have a strong influence on how we think, speak, and act.
Absolutely. Yeah. And for most people, it's once they get exposed to the Three Colors of Worldview, then they realize how profound and how deep this stuff is.
Yeah.
But when you first try to explain it to people, they say, really? I didn't know that layer of my being was even there. Yes, I carry a passport. I grew up in a certain place or grew up in multiple places, but is there a layer called cultural drivers? Yeah. And once they see the report, they say, oh, now I get it. Yeah, I see it everywhere.
And that's been the case for me. Yes, I see it everywhere now. And it has changed the way I see the world and the way I see myself. That has been very true for me. I can't unsee it.
We always warn people about that. Yeah.
That has been very true. And I don't want to go back. I don't want to go back to the pre-3C Shelley, so to speak. But yeah.
Right.
So now that we've kind of given that big overview of what is the assessment, what are the three colors, how do they work on the assessment? Let's just talk about the three colors individually. First of all, why did you name it the three colors? Why three colors? Like what is that?
Yeah, a number of reasons. One is we needed some sort of a metaphor. So my wife is a photographer, so at home we're inundated with the world of color. So there is CMYK and RGB. Now the three colors, the worldview framework has three drivers and three worldview drivers. So when we started to look for a metaphor, we thought that the idea of connecting color to the framework, first of all, culture is colorful, especially when you go around the world, but also the way our three colors of worldview show up. There's typically a combination of all three for most people on this planet. And typically one of them is maybe more important, or two, and then a smaller percentage of the world population. All three of them are almost equally important. So when we started looking at that, we thought, the whole world of color might be a nice metaphor. And so we connected the RGB color palette, so to speak, to the three colors of worldview. And it is a nice metaphor, but as every metaphor goes, they always go wrong at one point or another. But then you could, the RGB scheme in the world of computers, 16.7 million colors can be created with three, red, green, and blue.
Yes.
And no, we don't have 16.7 million iterations of the three colors of worldview, but there is a lot of possible combinations. And so that idea as a metaphor is helpful. It's colorful. It's complex. It's simple. The language, it's simple, but it is complex at the same time.
Okay. That's helpful. I love that. Yes. So that's the three colors of worldview. That's why it's named as it is. Okay, let's look at each worldview. So first of all, explain to me what a worldview is. What is a worldview and why does it matter?
That's a complicated question.
I know.
So in the world of academia, we always need to quantify that we are not necessarily talking about worldview from a large picture point of view. We're talking about cultural worldview drivers.
Okay. All right.
So it's a slice of the larger picture of worldview, especially in the world of anthropology and sociology and theology, even where worldview then is unpacked in many facets. We're just zooming in on one facet, and that's how my cultural journey has shaped the way I'm culturally wired, and we quantify that with those three worldview drivers.
That's helpful. Okay. Cultural worldviews. All right. So that's how I see the world from a cultural perspective. Is that how you would say?
Yeah. Great. So it's a lens through which we see the world. So it indeed shapes. So when I wear those glasses, so to speak, it shapes how I think, how I speak, and how I act.
Okay. That's helpful. All right, let's look at the first one together. So honor and shame. Let's look at that first word. But can you tell me, what is honor?
So honor is both external and internal at the same time. So it's something you feel. You feel either honorable. You feel that you are a person who is in and of themselves honorable, or a person who is part of an honorable community, or a person who might be able to give honor to somebody else. So a simple example would be that I would be able to give honor to my dad, or the fact that my dad is my dad allows me to be honorable just because of the history, etc. Or it could be a company. I might have a sense of pride because I work for a certain company, or I work for a certain leader in that company, or with a certain leader in that company. But then it's also external. So it's what others bestow on me. So the sense of external honor is basically, do people reinforce, endorse the existence of honor? So is Marco or is Shelley, are they honorable people? And then you need to talk to people who know us and listen to what they say about us. So yeah, it's both external and internal. And we listen to parents talk to their kids about honor. It's typically along the lines of, you are a child of this family, or you are a son or daughter of us, or of a larger cluster of families, or a tribe, or when you start traveling internationally, you are part of this nation. You need to make us proud, you know? So yeah, it's very hard to say, you know, that honor can be quantified. There's a lot of, it's external endorsement, external affirmation comes with it, but it's also a feeling. It's a sense of being honorable. So, and that's not always easy to explain.
That's good. Thank you. That's really helpful. So how is that linked to shame? How do they work together, kind of?
Yeah. So I think examples are always the easiest to connect with. So if I remember, I was a little bit of a rebellious kid, and I would test my teachers in school.
No way.
And I still remember, I must have been really small, but I do remember the one day the head teacher came to our house, and we have sort of a path that gets up to the front door, and I heard him come. I saw him. I knew exactly why he was there. And then my mom opened the door, and she immediately felt, you know, oh no, I'm going to hear something about one of my sons, which it was exactly what happened. And that feeling of, what has one of my sons, or what have my sons now done this time? And I was eventually called in, and I was told that in no uncertain terms that this was unacceptable. And then, of course, later on, my dad was always a bit chill about this, maybe because he was more of a rebel himself. But my mom was saying, yeah, you know, we, as the Blankenberg family, we don't do things like that. But I could see the sense of shame on my mom's face when she opened the door when the head teacher came in. Yeah, so it's falling out of line, or doing things that are people frown. You know, when it's like, what, you did what? I was not expecting that from somebody like you. So that sense of where your honor is basically diminished through your words, through your actions. And then either shame happens just thinking about it. So I say, oh yeah, my friends invited me to do XYZ and I really want to do it, but I'm going to say no, because if my parents find out, if my sibling, my older brother finds out, or if my grandpa would know that I had said yes to my friends to do XYZ, I would hear about it,
Mm-hmm.
and then it becomes a deterrent almost. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So I see how they're linked. So honor and shame and kind of the balance of the two and the way they work together create a way of seeing the world.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's so strong that it's not just a way of seeing the world. It's how it drives how I operate. So if honor is a main driver for me culturally and avoiding shame is automatically linked to that, then the way I make decisions, who to see, what to do, and then when I'm in people's presence, what to say, what not to say, how to share my opinion, if I would share my opinion at all, or just stay quiet, or say things like, I'm not sure about that. I don't know. Purposefully, because the main driver is to maintain honor and avoid shame. So everything I do becomes governed by that. And in very practical terms, that could mean that the family decides where I go to school, because that is a decision that either adds honor to me and the family, or potentially adds shame. Deciding who to marry, where to live, which company to in the future work for. All these decisions become connected to consideration. Does it bring more honor, or would it potentially diminish the amount of honor due us? So, yeah.
And when I'm interacting with someone from this worldview, or even if I'm not, am I aware that there's an honor-shame interchange? Like, and when I'm speaking, am I aware that I'm either giving honor or shame? In other words, do you know what I'm saying? Like,
that is the tricky part, because if you, for instance, are not familiar with, let's say, we're talking about honor shame now. If you're not familiar with it, I was a little bit familiar with it. I grew up in a small village in the Netherlands where what the neighbors think and the reputation of the family was very important. So I was somewhat familiar with it, but moving into the Middle East and doing a lot of work in Africa, marrying into Africa, I realized how much I didn't know at all. So in my case, a lot of my mistakes, it was only sort of by the grace of people actually pulling me aside or having the courage to talk to me about, hey, Marco, how did you feel that conversation went? and then I would say, it was okay. And then they would say, well, can I give you some feedback? When you said this, do you realize that caused a very embarrassing moment for the other person? And I would say, really? I have no idea. And fortunately, having people around me, starting to explain it, I realized, man, there is so much to learn. Yeah. So
because they were aware of the honor that was being exchanged or not, and you were completely unaware, perhaps. You're like not even.
Yeah. We buy those worldview drivers. Ming Jin says those are the glasses that color your world, color your thinking, your speaking, and acting. And by default, that's the glasses we wear, because that's how we so far have been successful in life. And when you then start interacting with people who are culturally very different from you, then all of a sudden, your default way of operating actually backfires on you.
Yeah.
And it starts sometimes with simple things, like when I first met my wife's grandmother, etiquette was very important for her. That was an honorable thing, that her family followed etiquette. So I totally missed that part. So I shamed who's now my wife, and her grandma was very gracious. But like, for instance, dessert was put on the table and I picked up the spoon and started eating. And everybody was like, no, you don't do that. Grandma needs to sit down. She picks up the spoon, and then everybody else picks up the spoon.
Oh, yeah.
And then I added even more shame by picking up my bowl and finishing the last remains. In my case, in the Netherlands, that would show that you really like the dessert.
Not here.
No, and Grandma was all flustered. And she, but there is more, Marco. There is more.
Yeah.
So it's those are fun stories to tell afterwards, and they are relatively innocent, but you can really step into the unknown and where you just mess things up badly. Yeah.
I was talking to Ming Jin. Ming Jin Tong is one of our practitioners, ICI practitioners. He was saying that, because I said to him, he was raised in honor shame. And I said, I just can't imagine interacting with that sense of honor versus shame all the time. Like when I'm speaking to you, aware that I'm either giving you honor or I'm shaming you. It's just so much a part of my subconscious. And he said, well, I can imagine interacting with you that way, like not having that subconscious. Mm-hmm. It's so much a part of the way I think about every interaction and every conversation. And I'm like, wow. It's just
I was with about 2 months ago. I was with a family working with their business conglomerate, and we started a family development program, and there were 4 generations in the room.
Wow!
The old grandfather wanted to be there because he was very excited about this new program. And he wanted to say a few words at the beginning, and then the next generation was there, and then 2 more generations. So the youngest person was early 20s, and the oldest person was at least in their 70s. And it was fascinating when the older generation was in the room, whatever they said, everybody was endorsing it and respecting it. And, even the body language was almost like, yes, we respect you. And then they were there just to show their support for the program, and then they left. And then little by little, the conversation started to change because they wanted to honor the older generation while they were there. They were not disrespectful, but they were, when they left and we got further into the program, they started to talk about their vision for the future and how some of the ways had to change, but they were very, very respectful in the way they packaged it. But they were not able to talk about that when the third, fourth, the older generations were in the room. And it's a classical example on how honor versus shame then drives everything that happens in the room.
Yes,
drives every conversation and everything that's said and everything that's not said.
Everything said and not said. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so good, Marco. I love this picture of this worldview. I feel like we've fleshed it out very well. Thank you. That is so helpful. Let's look at innocence and guilt next. Yeah.
Now, one thing that we haven't said yet, and that's something that we sort of wrestled with in the beginning when we started to use these tools, we wouldn't explain to people why we have quite emotive words in this framework. So to present people with words like shame and guilt and fear, it's like, whoa, where are you taking
strong? Yeah.
They're strong words. And we talked a lot about, well, what do we do? And we really felt that we needed to keep those strong emotional words in the framework, because when it comes to our cultural worldview drivers, these are very real. So, for instance, just talking now about honor versus shame and the avoidance or the diminishing impact of shame becomes a preoccupation almost.
True.
And when you talk to people who have been shamed, especially if that was done in public, in an honor shame environment, that leaves deep, deep scars,
Yes.
And so it's real. And we wanted to create a space where it becomes safe to talk about these things, because especially, may it be in families, may it be in schools or in workplaces, if you don't get a aligned thinking about what we do with these things, then they start to live their own life. So we purposefully kept those emotion-loaded words in there with a commitment that our facilitators, our coaches, are gentle, they are cultural learners, and they will work really hard to create a safe space to open up that conversation.
Oh, that's good. That's good, Marco. Yes. And I can say that when our practitioners are trained, we are trained to be cultural learners and understand that with humility, that these are strong words and there are painful places that they can go. These words can go. Yeah.
So anyway, as a in between.
That's good. That's a very good point. I'm so glad you pointed that out. And guilt is another strong thing I want to avoid at all times. So so tell me about innocence and guilt and innocence. What is innocence and why is it so important?
Yeah, like with honor, a state of innocence is a condition of being, so to speak. So that sense that I have done everything to the best of my ability, or I've made good choices, or I lived up to the standard that was set in society, either by goals or by policies or by the law or by a higher authority. And that sense that you feel good about yourself because you've done what was required. And therefore, the idea of right and wrong is strongly associated with innocence and guilt. So by doing the right thing, you create that sense of innocence. I feel good about myself because I've done the right thing. And the flip side is also true that if I don't do the right thing, I do that which is wrong. And sometimes there is external standards for that. Sometimes you create your own internal standards. But that sense of I messed up, I've done the wrong thing, I made the wrong choice, I did not do my utmost, the best I could. And I feel a sense of guilt because of that. So it's very much driven by standards or by agreed upon levels of performance, for instance, or you often hear people talk about expectations being met or expectations not being met. That's a very, very common language when it comes to innocence versus guilt.
Okay. And if you had to contrast honor and innocence, what would you say is the biggest difference between the two?
Honor very much is linked to my community. So it's how I represent the community, the family, the tribe, the business, or if I travel the nation. A sense of innocence is more linked to a standard that was set. Now, typically that standard might be set by my family, by the local sports club that I'm part of, by the community of faith, or the law of the country. But it's meeting that standard or following that standard that creates that sense of innocence or guilt. While with honor shame, it's very much about the community. The consensus of the community wants me to do X, Y, Z. So if I don't, the sense of guilt is not the first thing I feel.
Right.
I feel a sense of shame because I wasn't a good representative or good contributor to my community.
But in regards to innocence guilt, I feel guilt because I didn't uphold the standard that was expected of me. I didn't follow the rules or, okay. Yeah. Okay, that's good. I love the contrast. Thank you for just contrasting that for us. Okay, so that's a good picture of innocence guilt. Can you just give us an example of innocence guilt, how it plays out? Like, what's an example of innocence being, of a standard being broken and how that would instigate?
Well, I can tell you about a clash I had where I had forgotten how strong a driver that was. So I've been outside my home country now for over 30 years. I've lived in both honor shame as well as power fear oriented cultures, and I have worked with many companies and organizations that have that don't have innocence guilt as their main driver. So I went to the Netherlands, and I was driving a car. We were picking up friends from the railway station in one of the cities, and I told my wife, "Oh, it's hard to find parking. Just sit in the car. I'll quickly check the platform at the railway station, and I'll pick up our friends, and I'll come back." And by the time I came back, the police officer was next to the car. He got off his motorbike, and he was picked up his book and started writing, giving us a ticket.
Oh, dear.
And I started talking to him, of course, from an honor-shame perspective. Although he is representing the law, at the same time, you can always have a conversation with somebody,
yes.
And you can see what you can do about it. And he got offended by me doing that because I was in the wrong place. I parked in the wrong place, but I told him, but my wife was in the car and she has a driving license. You could have just told her to move. And he looked funny at me and said, What do you mean? I mean, you parked in the wrong place, You did the wrong thing.
You did the wrong thing.
I'm not going to ask
the
your
wrong.
wife to move.
What are you talking about? Yeah.
And I was totally missing that. I was trying to use tactics that were offensive to him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, that's a great example. Yeah. Right.
So classical, I was pulling more honor shame tactics on a police officer who was rigidly innocence guilt, upholding the law.
Upholding the law.
He was getting frustrated with me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes, that's okay. That's a great example. What about? I love the one you use about stoplights.
Yeah. So that's another one. So. Traffic lights are by and large across the world used in almost every country.
Yes.
And they typically are used in a similar fashion. So green is go, orange is watch out. Now in quite a few countries, people say speed up, and then red is stop. Yeah, red is stop. Now, when somebody who's more innocence guilt right wrong oriented, when they stop at a traffic light and you ask them, so why did you stop? What was the main driver? Well, it was red. So the law says if it's red, you stop.
Yes.
If somebody is more honor shame oriented, they might say something like, well, I don't know who are in the other cars on the intersection, and I don't want to be seen as a family member of this and this family to be running a red light because they are going to talk about me. So I will stop when the light is red. And if you then ask them, so what if there's absolutely no cars at all? There's nobody there and you're the only one on the intersection and the light goes red. And then there would be some, situational thinking. In some cases, they might still stop for red. In other cases, they might say, well, then the traffic light is not useful. So then I might still go through it. And when it comes to power fear, I mean, the main motivator is either knowing that on that intersection, sometimes the policeman is hidden behind the bushes, so to speak.
Yes.
And I'm afraid that I might get caught. Or it's really the fear of an accident or the fear of damage, either physical damage or material damage. So the interesting thing is all three of those drivers might be at play in somebody.
Yes.
And so the motivation is different. On the outside, the decisions or the actions that people take look very similar. You stop for a red light. And we had a lot of fun writing 4 different articles. They're on our website on how you can use the 3 Colors of Worldview to almost predict how somebody's going to behave on the road. And,
those are good. Yes. I'm glad you brought this up.
Yeah, it works. It's fascinating. You can predict from a distance very often how people are going to behave. And those 3 Colors of Worldview have a huge impact on the flow of traffic.
I love that. And this is a great segue into the last worldview, the final worldview that
we're talking about, which is power and fear. So I'd really like to spend a little time on this one, because this is the one that I think possibly people may wrestle with the most. So I'd love to kind of talk about power and then fear. And then again, how do they interact? Why is this an important worldview? Why do we need to include this one?
Yeah.
So let's start with power.
Yeah. So the word power is a tricky word.
Yeah.
People typically understand fear, but the word power is often seen in a negative light. So, and I guess it's because we just live in a world with lots of beauty, but also with lots of negative experiences. And very often those negative experiences are connected to abuse of power in small and big ways. So that's why one of the sort of side missions of KnowledgeWorks is to reestablish a healthier relationship with the word power.
I love that.
It's so it's one of the challenges we really face, and it starts with in our case, if I'm required to lead, which is a position of power, then do I know how to do that well? Do I know how to do that in a positive way? And it's so super important. And it starts with young kids. And I work predominantly with adults in the workplace, with leaders in the workplace. And I meet way too many leaders who really have not been equipped properly to work in a healthy way with power. So we see power as something that's neutral in and of itself. We are encouraging and coaching and training people to use power in a life-giving way. That's what we're after. And I often like to add to it that we all have examples where people have used power in such a way that it sucked the life out of you.
Yes.
And yes, we've seen that in the workplace. We see that in families, in neighborhoods, in apartment blocks, etc., in the sports clubs, in religious institutions. So this whole idea that power is in and of itself neutral, and that we need to wrestle with, what do I do with positions of power? What do I do with situations where I'm asked to speak in a meeting, which is actually a position of power, and the words that come out of my mouth are going to be either life-giving for the people in that meeting or for the subject, or they're not. And that's probably one of the reasons why I love talking about this, because it's my own battle as well. It's a continuous battle to really be life-giving in my thoughts, in my words, in my actions, but also to work with people who might not be, who might actually use power to create fear, to create ambiguity, uncertainty, which is then the other side of the equation. So,
and
a difficult one in this world, a really difficult.
It is. And I found that I'll speak, as an American living in the United States of America, I do find that people are uncomfortable with the power that they have, if they have it. Like sometimes they don't want to acknowledge it. They don't even see that they have power. And Ming Jin, again, quoting Ming Jin, our ICI practitioner, said that if you want to understand power, talk to the powerless, talk to people that have it. Yes. You'll get a better sense of what it looks like. And that's really been profound for me to think about. But so with that regard, I love our stance and helping me understand the power I have in certain situations has been so helpful. So this world and understanding this worldview has been just revolutionary for me, profound. So so you think that's why this worldview is important? I mean, you could have just said, okay, innocence, guilt, honor, shame, two crucial worldviews. We'll stick with those two. Why add power, fear? And can you just explain the thinking behind it and why you think it's crucial? I mean, I think I know, but I want to hear what you think.
Yeah, no, it's crucial because first of all, when power is not either used in a positive way, very often those become the hero stories of society. And then when power is used in a negative way, those stories might also get told, but they get told more as warnings. And many societies have ebbed and flowed either between the three colors of worldview. So if you look at human history across the continents and across the empires, you will see that even just, let's say, look at the Roman Empire. So there was a phase in the Roman Empire where innocence, guilt was super important. Roman culture in those days, honor was very important. It was embedded into the way the military was run, but there was also a strong sense of innocence, guilt. But then as the Roman Empire sort of started to disintegrate, that's where power starts to be more and more abused, and where fear slipped into the system. And then you got the split between the East and the Roman Empire, etc. Now, I'm not a historian, but I like to bring tools like the Three Colors of Worldview to history, and I love reading about history. And you can see it in major shifts in societies around the world, that what they do with power is so significant. You saw it, for instance, with the Reformation in Europe, with the Church Reformation, with the likes of Luther and Calvin, etc. That was a major shift going against the unhealthy use of power by the church, and then bringing people back to what is right and what is wrong, and encouraging people to find out for themselves what is right and wrong. So I love that third worldview driver, because it explains a lot of what we experience in the world today. So some societies have recently drifted more into a power-fear way of functioning. And very often that's driven by either military might, or it's driven by certain leaders coming into power. And it just sheds light on so many dilemmas that the world is faced with at the moment.
That that the other two worldviews don't. They cannot explain in the same way that power fear does.
Exactly. Yeah, and then when you think back at heroes like Martin Luther King Jr., for him, his thinking about power and how his nonviolent movement was really about using power in a nonviolent way. And he talks a lot about the tension between power and love, for instance.
Yeah.
Power without love is actually becomes destructive, but love without power is actually he calls it anemic. It's not gonna, it doesn't have the impact that it should have in the world. So understanding power and understanding what to do with it, how to use it in a healthy way, how to detect when it's used in an unhealthy way, and actually being able to be a force for change if that happens, or at least knowing when you can be and when you might not be able to be. So yeah, I think it's essential that third dimension is there, because many organizations we work with, power is a major issue. It's really and what to do with it, and how to create a healthy relationship with power across the layers of an organization, with direct reports, etc., but also how to use power in a healthy way with the world around us. It's a significant issue when we look at our relationship with the planet, for instance. There's a major challenge with countries where that form of abuse of power is now becoming a big no-no, and there's other countries where it's still perfectly okay.
Yes,
we're in control, and we can do with our resources whatever we want. And that's another way where you can look at power fear at that third dimension in the Three Colors of Worldview, where it's really helpful to understand why certain things are happening in society.
What about one of the differences between power, fear, and honor, shame, and innocence, guilt as well, perhaps, is the allegiance to a leader? Remember, can you kind of talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, it's tricky because as soon as I talk about that, multiple examples in the world of politics come to mind.
That's true. But we can let the listeners make those
connections.
We won't, connections. We won't say anything.
Yeah. But yeah, it's so right, Shelley. It's if you vote or pledge allegiance to a leader, that automatically means that if I want to stay in favor with that leader, I have to be loyal. I have to show compliance. And sometimes that means that I have to make really hard choices, especially if that leader then starts to do things that I am surprised by or that I initially thought he or she would never do.
Mm-hmm. Or disagree with. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. But then in many cases, if power fear is a strong driver in that context, people will still continue down the compliance route. Mm-hmm. Especially if then on top of that, the leader uses power to create fear and to create ambiguity or to use random punishment, for instance, to keep people in line. And then it becomes tricky. And I have a lot of empathy for people who get caught in those situations. It doesn't justify what they do, but I fully understand how enslaving almost that type of a situation can be. And you have the other side as well. So where leaders really use power in a beautiful way, and they are really the protector and nurturer of their people. And then it's easy to be loyal. Then it's easy to show that you're willing to go the extra mile. And I've seen people say, I don't want to leave this organization because I don't want to work for any other boss.
Yes.
But there is hierarchy and there is a chain of command. But
it's empowering.
It's an empowering form of leadership. And people then say, I don't care about the hierarchy.
Right.
Because I feel protected, I feel valued, and what we're doing is important. So yeah, you can have the positive side and the negative side.
Right. And in power fear, my allegiance is to a leader. And if the power changes, then my allegiance could be to someone new. But in honor, right?
It flips very quickly.
Yeah, it flips. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think that's an interesting point. Oh,
yeah. Boy, so power fear allegiance is very much linked to who is the rising star, who's the falling star. So
yes, right.
So with honor shame, that's not the case. Your allegiance is much more long term.
Okay.
So
yeah. Oh, thank you, Marco. This is so interesting. I mean, we could talk about this for hours, because the implications are everywhere, and it affects all of life. I mean, I watch the news, and I see it everywhere now. I often wish, diplomacy 101. I wish all politicians were taught the worldviews, because it just makes so much more sense when you see news through these lenses. Oh, that's why they're doing that. That makes sense.
If this interests you, if you'd like to learn more about your personal cultural worldview drivers, come on over to interculturalagility.com. It's our website, and you can learn more about the 3 Colors of Worldview assessment. You can take the assessment and meet with an intercultural intelligence practitioner who will walk you through that assessment and help you understand kind of how those cultural worldview drivers make you tick and how they've shaped you. So it's just an exciting journey to understand how culture has shaped you. So check it out, interculturalagility.com.
Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of the Cultural Agility Podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, share it with someone. The best way to help us out is by leaving a review on your favorite podcast app or channel, or forward and recommend this podcast to people around you. As always, if any of the topics we discussed today intrigue you, you will find links to articles discussing them in greater depth in the podcast notes. If you would like to learn more about intercultural intelligence and how you can become more culturally agile, you can find more information and hundreds of articles at knowledgeworks.com. A special thanks to Jason Carter for composing the music on this podcast, and to the whole KnowledgeWorks team for making this podcast a success. Thank you, Nita Rodriguez, Ara Azizbekian, Rajitha Raj, and thanks to Vip and George for audio production, Rosalind Raj for scheduling, and Caleb Strauss for marketing and helping produce this podcast.